So the Zach attack got a little slap on the wrist today. Can't say I'm really surprised that he got 2 games as Lucic got 2 for kind of the same story. I'm sort of glad it was 2 games and 2 games only, because that means Zach will be good to go for the 3rd installment of the Battle of Alberta, which I would hope ends up being like a good old Junior B rough and tumble kind of hockey game. I think the league sort of set a precedent that you can you can take healthy runs at players, and as long as you're not targeting the head specifically, she's fair game. I thought that first hit Kachuk laid on Zach, to me, from everything I've seen, it looked like the principal point of contact and the major impact of that first hit when Zach was trying to wrap around was pretty much Cassian's neck. Neck's connected to the head, shoulders connected to the head, whatever. Wasn't directly the head, so I guess it's fair game. But I don't like a guy who, pulls off of his assignment on the blue line to, smash into a forward kind of down low. That hit I had a little bit of issue with, and if I was Cassian right there and then, I would have dropped the gloves and got after it. And whether he drops the gloves or not, that's up to Kachuk, but I would have been throwing right there and then if that was me. Good on Cassian for showing restraint there and waiting till later before finally losing his cool. I'm not mad at Cassian at all for giving the Flames a double minor and whatever, for losing his mind, really. You sort of wish a guy would, take a number and kind of run him over. I think you got to know by now that, let's face it, Kachuk doesn't know honor, doesn't respect the code. None of that shit applies to him. He's just out there to, create a stink and be a pest, and he does that very well. Would I want him on my team? Yeah. Do I still think, he's an honorable player? No. Yeah. I kind of the same way with Brad Marchand. I mean, I'd love Marchand on the Oilers, but would I totally respect his game? Not really. I think you sort of have to be honest with yourself there when it comes to that. That hit where he caught Cassian kind of behind the net or behind the goal line, sort of off to the right-hand side there. If you watch that whole sequence, Kachuk is stalking Cassian from the time he's moving, on the left-hand side behind the net all the way across. And he waits and he waits, and then he attacks. And, he's stalking him. He's watching him from pretty much the top of the circles there before he goes in and attacks him. To me, that's, Jordan Tutu, Rafi Torres, Matt Cook kind of school of hitting. And I thought the game was sort of moving away from that kind of stuff, but apparently it isn't. If I'm Dave Tippett, though, Cassian's just going to come back from a suspension, but I sort of give him the green light to leave his man on, leave his defensive assignment and run the guy. I don't think, you put a bounty on his head like Reg Dunlop in Slapshot, but you answer back, and you have to, and you take a healthy run, you make it significant, and you go from there. I mean, if you want to square up, or you want to, I think we've moved away from the days where the start of the first period. You send out Nurse, Kara, Cassian, and anybody that can chuck them. for the opening face-off, and you get after it. I think we've sort of moved away from that, but you know what? Maybe you go back to that. Um, I'm a bit of a caveman in my theology, but you got to put some battle back in the Battle of Alberta, and good on Kachuk for making us all talk about a Calgary Edmonton game for more than 5 minutes after. I mean, um, you're gonna have that game circled on the calendar. You're gonna know it's the third game back, or 3 games away. So it it's gonna be a fun one. I should clarify. I think in my theology, it's either gonna be a good old fashioned almost senior level hockey game where people are running around and going after each other, and eye for an eye kind of get after it. It's either that or it's going to be a snooze fest where people won't touch anybody. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a spirited, chippy kind of nasty sort of affair, and I kind of get a kick out of Flames fans thinking Lucic is going to settle things down. I'd be surprised if he gets engaged in anything. The guy just doesn't seem to play that sort of style against his old teams, whether it's Boston, LA, or Edmonton now. And, as much as I want to see a Nurse Lucic, round 2 kind of rematch, I'd love to see that. I think the two of them, admire each other too much to engage in that. I'd love to see it though. Yeah, there. Some people say, well, Kachuk's not going to answer for or show any honor for what he does, and I agree with that. So some of the theology is go after Gaudreau or Monahan or some of the Flames better players, and yeah, you can play it that way, and to think that that's out of the realm of possibility, I think is pretty naive. Guys see one guy taking liberties on another, then it just becomes open season. And I mean, McDavid and Draisaitl, saw their share of liberties kind of trying to be taken on them. So yeah, yeah. No, if I'm Cassian, I just go head hunting. It's not like Cassian can't lay out big body checks, and he can skate. So, I mean, you're a first line player now. You're not a fourth line dud. So to be leaving your defensive assignment to lay out licks is not something you'd like to see on a normal kind of day to day sort of basis. But after last game, I mean, I don't know. I would give the guy the green light if I was his coach. I wouldn't tell him to hold back. But you sort of want to keep it within the confines of the rules. You don't want to penalize your team and end up losing another hockey game to the Flames. You still want to win the game, but you definitely need to inflict some punishment. And I've seen the footage of Cassian when he did drop the gloves and start throwing. I'm sorry, but he didn't really land anything of significance. I think it was actually to Kachuk's benefit not to be facing him, face to face. I think a lot of the punches that Cassian threw were pretty much just glancing blows. Nothing really caught Kachuk flush. But I don't know. I'm happy. I like to see guys stand up for themselves, and when you have to, you take matters into your own hands. And I kind of get a kick out of people saying, you know, if you're hit clean, then why do you have to fight? Well, there's one thing to hit a guy to separate him from the puck, take the puck, and go and try to score a goal. There's another thing when you're leaving your blue line assignment to take a healthy run at a guy. You know, the first one, the one on the wraparound try, I think Kachuk took about 4 strides and turned sideways like he was going to hip check him to I don't know. I don't know what the idea there was, but it was a pretty big hit. Cassian definitely needs to do up his chin strap so his helmet doesn't go flying. And fall and smash his head on the ice. That's wouldn't have been a good thing. But that other hit that was kind of on the right side of the net, kind of behind the goal line there. If you see, like, I saw today kind of an image of where Kachuk started and where his eyes were focused and where Cassian was. Cassian was on the left side behind the net, and he was going to come around. Kachuk watched that whole play develop, and when Cassian got to the middle of the net and saw that he was going to come to the right side, he took off for him. And, I think he started his strides right at the face-off dots, and the hit was right along the boards. I mean, you're talking about a 15 to 20-foot run there. And you can say, well, he glided into him at the end, but, you're up to full speed at that point. If Cassian sees him coming at all and hits the brakes, I mean, Kachuk runs a risk of fucking breaking his own neck in the boards. But if you're going to sit there and tell me that isn't like a predatory style hit, I don't know. I mean, he literally stalked him. He was looking off like to the left side of the net, and he watched that whole play come. I mean, that's he stalked him. I mean, that was he was big game hunting there. And you catch him flush, and the only reason there's no suspension there is because you didn't hit his head. But for me, I mean, that's easily a charging call. And the first one where he caught him on the runaround, that was, I mean, that was charging too. And if everybody's seen the replay. If you watch it close enough, Kachuk skates. I mean, he's not airborne 3 feet in the air, but he's not really on the ice either. He's leaving his feet too. I mean, 4 strides, you let it go. Usually it's 2 strides, but whatever. I'm okay with sort of letting that go. But if you do make that call, then the whole melee that ends up happening doesn't happen. So whatever. I was expecting 2 games for Cassian. That's what he got. And is what it is. But if I'm Tippett, I give him the green light to really, go targeting the guy. I don't know if you need to make the focus of the next game, but I'd let him go. Whereas probably years past, Todd McClellan would say, put the clamps on him and bench the guy. But I digress. Sour Patch Kids and beers, it's the way to stay alive. Oh, man. I I actually missed that game. I was working out by Fairview that night, and I didn't finish until about 9:30 out there. And by the time I got home, I think it was about 11:30 before I got home. So I listened to Jack and Bob on the way home, and then I saw all the replays and stuff. But it sounded like a pretty fun, spirited affair, and Calgary got the win. And, I don't know. People hard on Cassian. You took a double minor, and Stauffer saying it should have been 5 and a 2 and maybe another 2, and probably should have. I mean, to give him a roughing call, I guess, is almost hilarious, because I guess you're saying he didn't really land anything, and that sort of agrees with my assessment. But he sure threw enough. Maybe that's a ref realizing that maybe they should have called a charging call at the beginning of the whole thing. I don't know, but pretty funny to get a 2-game suspension out of a double minor for roughing. Not that I'm making fun of the 2-game suspension, but I'm sort of making fun of the double minor for roughing. And no, I don't think Tkachuk actually deserved to be suspended, but I think there was definitely a charging call on one of the 2 hits. Like I say, I think if they call charging on the first one with the wraparound try there, then all the rest of the shenanigans don't happen, because Oilers have a pretty potent power play, and they score on that first power play, and then Tkachuk isn't taking healthy runs anymore. Could be wrong, but it's kind of funny though. Now he'll target somebody that he knows is out of his weight class and won't fight, and he'll run around like Jordan Tutu with no sense of honor or any of that. But goddamn well that if he was running Yamamoto and Yamamoto took him to task, he would drop the gloves. That's where the punk and pussy part. It's true. If you're gonna run around and you're gonna take advantage of people in vulnerable positions, you should have the honor to answer the bell to somebody you've just victimized. Otherwise, you're just chicken shit coward, But there's a few of those kind of guys. Kind of like how James Neal, wasn't afraid to throw him under the bus. And you sort of hear a lot of ex-NHL players and stuff not really. I haven't seen one like former NHLer, say good for Tkachuk. It's hard to support that, how do you? The one thing I wish though is that, I think the one thing the NBA has that's pretty positive is when their referees are fucking terrible and they make a mistake, the league will step in and say that was a mistake, it should have been this. NHL will never fucking do that. Like, there's never a shred of humility. It's like they've never made a mistake ever, and everything an official does, they always will stand behind it 1,000,000%. They're like chicken shit afraid to say, this guy fucked that call up or whatever. It doesn't happen there, and it's hard to relate to that. I mean, everybody in every fucking job makes a mistake here and there. It happens, Show a sense of humanity and humility and admit that, okay, we fucked this up. It never ever takes place. It's it's fucking comical. Like, you guys aren't machines. You're not T2000s. You fuck up. So just admit it, and then we can respect you and move on. But if you don't have the stones to admit that you make a mistake, then how are you ever going to correct it? And they don't. They just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. We stand by our guy, you know. Fuck off. You know? Yeah. This isn't the army. You guys make mistakes. Just, you know, have some humility and admit it, and then work on trying to get better. And you know, it's not my real go-to to yip and yap about officiating, because I look at the, you know, sports as, you know, it's R5 or R6 or however many players you have on your team against their 5, 6, however many they've got on their team. And then sometimes you're playing against the officials, and they're just an obstacle in your way of getting to your destination. So, you know, to sit and cry about all the calls and that don't go your way and whatever, to me that's just a distraction of trying to get to your goal. But sometimes they're just so fucked up that, you know, you can't help but call them out. I got a lot of respect for McDavid, because for the most part he doesn't engage in that. I mean, he sees a ton of abuse every night, and you know, usually just tries to push through it and fight through it. And I sort of see, and okay, this is gonna sound real arrogant, but I sort of see an athlete, you know, that reminds me of myself, because I never used to really, you know, cry and bitch and moan about officiating or blame them for a loss. It was always something I could do on the court or, you know, on the ice to help my team win. And I made a mistake here or there that cost. But, you know, there's becoming times in the NHL where, you know, key calls get fucked up, and, you know, we've got a review process, and sometimes I think the review process is token at best, and they're afraid to show up officials for totally fucking something up. Not talking about Anaheim in the playoffs at all, but, you know, a lot of people will point to that and run with that as the reason why the Oilers lost the series. Well, they fucked up that call, there's no question about it, but you still gave up 2 other goals that, you know, were on yourself. So 2 team mistakes, 1 officiating mistake. You know, it's hard to really get really mad at the officials when you had a fucking pretty obvious chance to clear a puck, ice it, and that would have been the game anyway. What's up, Glenn? Yeah, I mean, officials are human too. They're gonna fuck up from time to time. I don't know. I just wish at times, you know, when there's an obvious fucking mistake, that the league would put out a release saying, "Yeah, we made a blatant fuck up here. We're sorry," you know. But there's none of that. I've seen the NFL kind of admit to mistakes before, and I've seen the NBA do it pretty often, but the NHL never does it. It just doesn't happen. So Cassian's got some time now to really take the Mike Tyson prison route and lift some weights and eat some vitamins and say some prayers and be fucking ready for the 3rd installment of the Battle of Alberta. Sort of can't wait for that. It's been a long time, you know, since these Battle of Alberta games had a little bit of fire and spirited you know, stuff going on in them. I'm sort of thankful that Tkachuk plays for the Flames, because for me, I mean, for a long time they've been a hard team to really hate. You know, I respected Jarome Iginla. I liked the guy. He's probably the only Flame ever that I really wish became an Oiler at some point. Um, Not since the days of really Regier and Phaneuf have I, really hated the Flames. But thank you to Matthew Tkachuk for reigniting the Flame hate. I think now since Perry and Kessler's injured in Anaheim, since Anaheim has really had a little bit of overhaul there. Flames have now pushed back into the forefront of Michael's top 5 hated teams in the NHL. Because Anaheim, during that whole playoff series, they catapulted to number 1 for me. I saw them as sort of dirty and cheap and love to hate kind of team. And for the longest time, Calgary was, I think, better than us for a while, and just didn't have the hateable players on their team, But welcome to the Matthew Tkachuk hate era. So here we are. And I don't really hate him, but you know what I mean. It's easier to have a healthy dislike for a player that's an agitator and not really somebody that abides by the code or has a sense of honor. And you know what? For the longest time, I had similar feelings, I guess, about Cassian when he ran over Gagne. I know I wasn't thrilled about that, but things change when you get that type player on your team, and I know I would welcome Matthew Tkachuk as an Edmonton Oiler. I still wouldn't respect a guy that sort of runs around and unleashes big hits, and then when somebody wants to stand up for themselves and take them to task for it, and walks away and turns the other cheek. I don't like that. If I'm gonna target people and run them over to show my testosterone and my manhood and all that, if they want to take me to task for it, I'll engage in that fight because I feel like I owe it to them. I think that's really what the code is all about. Yeah, so now I'm that game on Saturday was an emotional highs and lows. I mean, Edmonton had a lead, Calgary had a lead. It was kind of back and forth, and then all the Tkachuk stuff going on. I think tomorrow's game, I think it's against Nashville, going to be interesting to see if Edmonton can mentally be in that one. They had a really successful road trip, and then you wonder if they're sort of up on this high, and they dropped the game to Calgary, but there's so much mental and physical energy used in that game. They've got 2 days off, which is good, but are they going to be able to mentally reset and push forward against Nashville? And that's my question. It's kind of I think a little bit of a test of sort of their leadership and where they are as a team. Nashville hasn't been great this year, but recent coaching change and all that. And both teams need to win, so could be an interesting first period to move. And Cassian's suspended, so I guess the other question is, who takes his place? Do you make a call up? Do you call up Benson? If that's already happened, let me know, because I haven't seen it, but what do you do there? Kind of I think Edmonton is in a spot now where they're deeper on D than they are up front. They can survive, a little bit of a injury or two on their back end and still sort of be a functional group. But missing a forward, in their, especially out of their top six, really affects their team. And that's sort of, I guess, something that'll probably need to be addressed in the summer, is making your forward group a little deeper. Sort of feel like, Ray Parker Jr. Who are you gonna call? Tyler Benson. I don't know who that call up is, but you got to ring those phones. You got to figure something out, because you sort of need a top line guy. So if it's me, I'm calling up Benson, giving him a shot. A lot of people said before this whole suspension stuff, you can't just call him up to make him a third line guy, to put him in a position sort of not to succeed. But now you can give him 2 games, you can give him a look, on your top line. Because I don't know, I wouldn't mess with that second line, but also I guess, if you're calling up Benson and putting him on the first line, and he's with Connor and he should succeed, but he doesn't, then does that hurt his confidence? I don't know. So maybe you go back to Draisaitl, McDavid, and Neal, and run new Giamamoto and Benson. I don't know, but you got to do something. Haven't done a pod in a while, so kind of lazy tonight. Eating Sour Patch Kids and drinking a couple of Banquet. And the usual. Oh, man. People wanting to see... Flames fans are thinking Lucic and Cassian are going to fight. I don't know. I said this before, but I'll say it again. Honestly, I'd like to see a Nurse Lucic rematch, but I don't think it'll happen, because I'm pretty sure they're friends. So I'm just, Lucic is kind of like a sleepy owl. It doesn't seem like he gets really engaged into anything extracurricular in games against his old teams. Greetings from Mexico. Yeah, right on. Another cerveza, please. Are you gonna be at the Oilers Live Cup there, Mr. Glenn, at the end of February? Should be a good day. Robert Clark is going to sing the national anthem for us at our charity game, and Hunter, the mascot, is going to be in the crowd, and yeah, We're trying to make this one the best one we've ever done. And I'm in charge of getting us a trophy in which you can drink a beverage out of. Probably gonna have to settle for ginger ale that looks like champagne, but yeah. Feel like Dustin Penner. I'll never forget him on Hockey Night in Canada. Scott Oak asked him how he got in such great shape, and he said, well, I've cut back on the Sour Patch Kids and wheat-based drinks. To this day, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard on After Hours. I got a special little Christmas present from my girlfriend. I'd like to show you guys. I'm going to try to. Need to hang this guy up somewhere for these little pods, but haven't got there yet. Yeah, she spoiled me. Signed by Grant. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Lisa Fear. Thanks, Kim. Oh, man. Well, I think I'm out of hot air, so I will bid you guys adieu, and I will leave you with what I always say. Keep your sticks on the ice and keep reaching for the stars, and go Oilers go. Cheers and good night. Peace.